The microphone fell silent mid-verse as Tupac's eyes locked onto someone in the crowd who shouldn't have been there. What happened next would haunt everyone who witnessed it, and months later, when Tupac was gunned down in Las Vegas, they would understand exactly what they had seen that night. It was May 18, 1996. The Oakland Coliseum was electric with 60,000 fans packed shoulder to shoulder, screaming every lyric as Tupac performed what would become one of his most memorable concerts. The energy was infectious, the kind of raw power that only live hip-hop could generate. Tupac was in his element, commanding the stage with the confidence and charisma that had made him a global icon. He was halfway through California Love, the crowd singing along to every word, when something in the audience caught his attention. At first it seemed like nothing unusual. A fan trying to get closer to the stage perhaps, or someone holding up a sign. But as Tupac's gaze focused on a specific section of the crowd, his expression changed dramatically. The music continued. The band played on. But Tupac's voice simply stopped. He stood frozen at center stage, microphone in hand, staring into the crowd with an intensity that made the audience uncomfortable. The backup singers tried to cover for him, continuing the song, but 60,000 people could sense that something was wrong. What Tupac saw in that crowd would connect directly to his death 4 months later. But first, you need to understand what led to this moment. 3 weeks earlier, Tupac had been receiving an unusual amount of threatening phone calls. Not the typical industry beef or gang-related threats he was used to, but something more sophisticated, more calculated. The calls came from different numbers, different voices, but they all contained the same message: "We're watching you, we know where you'll be." His security team had increased protection, but the calls kept coming. More disturbing was that the callers seemed to have inside information about his schedule, his movements, even private conversations he'd had with close friends. Someone was monitoring him closely, and they wanted him to know it. Frank Alexander, his head of security, had been investigating the threats for weeks. "Pac, these ain't set coming from the usual suspects." Frank had told him, "These people got resources, connections, they know things they shouldn't set." No. The most recent call had come just hours before the Oakland concert. The voice was calm, professional, almost friendly. "Enjoy your show tonight, Mr. Shakur. We'll all be watching from the crowd." That call was why Tupac was scanning the audience more carefully than usual. He was looking for faces that didn't belong, people who seemed out of place among the typical hip-hop crowd. He had developed an instinct for spotting potential threats, and tonight, that instinct was screaming. When his eyes found what he was looking for, everything made terrible sense. Standing in the VIP section, about 50 feet from the stage, was a man who clearly didn't belong at a Tupac concert. He was older, maybe mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit despite the casual venue. His hair was perfectly styled, his posture military straight, but most disturbing of all was his eyes. They were locked directly on Tupac with the focused intensity of a predator studying its prey. The man wasn't moving to the music, wasn't singing along, wasn't displaying any of the enthusiasm that characterized the rest of the crowd. He was simply watching, analyzing, memorizing every detail of Tupac's performance and behavior. But what made Tupac's blood run cold was the recognition. Used or not prepared for what that recognition revealed. Tupac had seen this man before, though never this close. 3 months earlier, outside a recording studio in Los Angeles, he had noticed someone watching him from a parked car across the street. The man had been too far away to see clearly, but something about his presence had felt wrong, threatening. 2 months ago, the same figure had been spotted at LAX airport when Tupac was flying to New York. Airport security had later reported that the man had been asking questions about Tupac's flight schedule, claiming to be a journalist working on a story. A month ago, Tupac's mother, Afeni, had called to say that a man matching this description had been asking neighbors questions about Tupac's childhood, his family, his personal history. When confronted, the man had claimed to be working on an authorized biography. Now here he was, in the VIP section of Tupac's concert, close enough to touch. And the way he was looking at Tupac wasn't the gaze of a fan, a journalist, or even a critic. It was the calculating stare of someone planning something very specific and very dangerous. The eye contact between them lasted only seconds, but in that brief moment, Tupac understood that he was looking at his future killer. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't paranoia or stage nerves. This was the face of the person who would end his life, studying him, learning his patterns, preparing for the moment when he would strike. What happened next stunned the entire crowd. Tupac dropped the microphone and walked directly to the edge of the stage, pointing into the VIP section where the man stood. 60,000 people followed his gaze, trying to understand what had captured their idol's attention so completely. "You," Tupac called out, his voice carrying across the arena without amplification. "In the gray suit, I see you." The crowd went silent. Even the band stopped playing, unsure of what was happening. All eyes turned to the VIP section, searching for whoever Tupac was addressing. The man in the gray suit didn't move, didn't react, didn't show any emotion. He simply continued staring at Tupac, with that same calculated intensity. It was as if he had expected this confrontation, had been prepared for the moment when his surveillance would be discovered. "What do you want from me?" Tupac demanded, his voice now picked up by the stage microphones and broadcast throughout the arena. Still no response from the man. But something else was happening in the crowd. People near the man were starting to move away from him, sensing that something dangerous was occurring. The atmosphere in the arena had shifted from celebration to tension in a matter of seconds. Security guards were moving through the crowd toward the VIP section, but the man seemed unconcerned about their approach. He reached into his jacket, a movement that caused several people near him to panic and push backward. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a small device that looked like a phone or radio. He spoke into it briefly, never taking his eyes off Tupac. Then he smiled. It was the coldest, most threatening smile Tupac had ever seen. Not the expression of someone who had been caught, but of someone who had accomplished exactly what he had come to do. But the most chilling part was yet to come. The man turned and walked away, moving through the crowd with the confidence of someone who knew he wouldn't be stopped. Security guards were still pushing through the packed audience, but they were too far away and moving too slowly. By the time they reached the area where he had been standing, he was gone. Tupac stood at the edge of the stage watching the man disappear into the crowd. The entire arena was silent, 60,000 people holding their breath, waiting to understand what they had just witnessed. "Did you all see that?" Tupac asked into the microphone, his voice unsteady. "Did you all see how that man was looking at me?" A murmur went through the crowd. Many people had indeed noticed the strange interaction, the way the man had stared without emotion, the way he had smiled before leaving. "That man," Tupac continued, "that man is planning something. I don't know what, I don't know when, but I can see it in his eyes. Death. He sits planning death." The crowd didn't know how to respond. This wasn't part of the show, wasn't performance art or stage theater. This was their hero, visibly shaken, sharing his fear with 60,000 strangers. Frank Alexander was already on his radio, coordinating with security to track down the mysterious man. But somehow, everyone already knew it was too late. Whoever he was professional, prepared, and long gone. Tupac tried to continue the concert, but the energy had completely changed. He performed 3 more songs, but his heart wasn't in it. His eyes kept scanning the crowd, looking for other threats, other watchers. The joy of performing had been replaced by the stark awareness that he was being hunted. After the show, backstage was chaos. Security personnel, local police, FBI agents who had been monitoring the concert everyone wanted to know about the man in the gray suit. But despite having thousands of witnesses, despite security cameras throughout the venue, no one could provide useful information about who he was or how he had gained access to the VIP section. The tickets for that section had been purchased with cash under a false name, using fake identification. The security cameras had somehow malfunctioned in that specific area during the time frame when he was present. Even the witnesses who had been standing near him could only provide vague descriptions that seemed to contradict each other. It was as if the man had been a ghost, there one moment and gone the next. But Tupac knew he was real, and more importantly, Tupac knew he would see him again. What the investigation revealed would prove Tupac SIP's instincts were absolutely correct. FBI agents interviewed dozens of witnesses from the VIP section, trying to piece together information about the mysterious man. What they discovered was deeply disturbing. Multiple witnesses reported that the man had seemed to know personal details about Tupac that weren't public knowledge. He had been heard making comments about Tupac's schedule, his family, his business dealings, information that suggested either insider knowledge or extensive surveillance. More chilling was the testimony of Sarah Martinez, a fan who had been standing near the man during the concert. According to Sarah, the man had been taking detailed notes during Tupac's performance, documenting his movements, his habits, his security arrangements. He wasn't set, watching the show. Sarah told investigators. He was studying it, like he was memorizing everything for some specific purpose. The notes themselves were never found. When security finally reached the area where the man had been standing, there was no trace of any documentation. But Sarah's testimony was corroborated by 3 other witnesses who had noticed the man's strange behavior. Even more disturbing was what investigators found when they tracked the false identity used to purchase the VIP tickets. The name led to a network of shell companies and offshore accounts that suggested professional intelligence operations. This wasn't a random stalker or an obsessed fan. This was someone with significant resources and training. Federal agents classified the incident as a credible threat against a high-profile public figure and increased surveillance around Tupac. But the damage had already been done. The man had accomplished what he had come to do: psychological intimidation and intelligence gathering. Tupac, meanwhile, was dealing with the aftermath of having publicly acknowledged his fear. Critics accused him of paranoia, of creating drama for publicity, of being unable to handle the pressures of fame. But those closest to him saw the truth. He had genuinely encountered something that terrified him. Pac was never the same after that night, recalled Johnny J. Jackson, who had been backstage during the incident. He was always looking over his shoulder, always checking the crowd during performances. That man got into his head. The psychological impact was exactly what the surveillance had been designed to achieve. Tupac was now constantly aware that he was being watched, that his every move was being documented and analyzed. The freedom and spontaneity that had characterized his performances began to disappear, replaced by hypervigilance and anxiety. But the most significant consequence of that night wouldn't become apparent until months later. Here sits the connection that will give you chills. September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas. As Tupac sat in the passenger seat of Suge Knight's BMW, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds, one of the last things he saw was a familiar face in the crowd of onlookers that had gathered around the shooting scene. It was the man from the gray suit, the man who had stared at him with cold calculation during the Oakland concert 4 months earlier. He was standing at the edge of the crowd watching Tupac die with the same emotionless expression he had worn in the VIP section. Frank Alexander, who was first on the scene after the shooting, later testified that he had seen the man as well. He was just standing there watching, Frank recalled, not shocked like everyone else, not trying to help or call for an ambulance, just watching, like he was confirming that his job was done. By the time paramedics arrived and police began securing the scene, the man was gone again. But his presence at both the Oakland concert and the Las Vegas shooting was no coincidence. He had been tracking Tupac for months, learning his patterns, his security arrangements, his vulnerabilities. The eye contact at the Oakland concert hadn't been a random encounter. It had been a final intelligence gathering mission, the last step before executing a plan that had been months in the making. FBI investigations later revealed that the man in the gray suit was believed to be a professional assassin with connections to organized crime and potentially government intelligence agencies. His real identity was never confirmed, but his method of operation, extensive surveillance, followed by precise execution, matched patterns from several other high-profile eliminations. The Oakland concert had been his opportunity to study Tupac's behavior under stress, to see how he reacted to threats, to evaluate his security team's response protocols. Everything he observed that night would inform the strategy used to kill Tupac 4 months later. The 60,000 fans, who witnessed Tupac's strange behavior that night, had actually watched him make eye contact with his future killer. They had seen the moment when predator and prey recognized each other, when the hunt became personal, when death announced itself to its intended victim. But there sits one more detail about that night that makes the story even more chilling. After the concert, Tupac had insisted on meeting with FBI agents who were investigating the incident. During that meeting, he made a statement that would prove to be prophetically accurate. "That man is going to kill me," Tupac told the agents. "I don't fet know when, I don't fet know where, but I saw it in his eyes. He sits already decided. He sits just waiting for the right moment." The agents treated this as an emotional reaction to a stressful situation. They assured Tupac that security would be increased, that they would investigate the threat, that he would be protected. But Tupac knew better. "You don't test, understand," he insisted. "This isn't cest about protection. This is about a decision that cest has already been made. That man didn't cest come to my concert to threaten me. He came to say goodbye." He was absolutely right. The man in the gray suit had attended the Oakland concert as a final farewell, a last look at his target before completing the assignment. The eye contact, the smile, the deliberate visibility, it had all been calculated to leave Tupac with the knowledge that his death was inevitable. It was psychological warfare at its most cruel. The assassin wanted Tupac to know that he was going to die, wanted him to live with that knowledge for months, wanted him to experience the fear and helplessness of a marked man. The 60,000 fans who attended that concert witnessed something unprecedented in entertainment history. The moment when a performer made eye contact with his future killer. They saw the exact instant when Tupac understood that his death had been scheduled, planned, and was waiting for him somewhere in the near future. Many of those fans reported having nightmares for weeks after the concert, not understanding why the brief interaction had affected them so deeply. They couldn't articulate what they had witnessed, but they knew it was something terrible, something final. It wasn't until news of Tupac's murder reached them 4 months later that they understood what they had seen. They had been present for a deadly preview, a trailer for a tragedy that would soon unfold exactly as the man in the gray suit had planned. The microphone had fallen silent that night, because Tupac had seen his own death staring back at him from the crowd. The chill that went through 60,000 fans was the collective recognition that they were witnessing something beyond a normal concert, something that connected directly to mortality and violence. Today, nearly 30 years later, many of those fans still remember that moment with crystal clarity. They remember the way Tupac's voice stopped mid-verse, the way he stared into the crowd, the way his entire demeanor changed when he made eye contact with someone who shouldn't have been there. They remember because they witnessed the exact moment when one of hip-hop's greatest artists came face to face with his own planned execution. The man in the gray suit achieved everything he had intended that night. He gathered the intelligence he needed, delivered the psychological message he wanted to send, and demonstrated to Tupac that escape was impossible. 4 months later, when Tupac was shot in Las Vegas, the execution was carried out with the precision that had been evident in every aspect of the surveillance operation. The killer knew exactly where Tupac would be, exactly when he would be vulnerable, exactly how to complete the assassination and disappear without leaving useful evidence. The Oakland concert had been the final rehearsal for a murder that would shock the world. The 60,000 fans who attended that show had unknowingly served as witnesses to the planning stages of one of the most significant assassinations in entertainment history. What Tupac saw in the crowd that night was his own death, personified in the form of a professional killer who wanted him to know that his time was running out. The eye contact they shared was the moment when hunter and prey acknowledged each other, when the condemned man saw the face of his executioner. The microphone fell silent because there are some truths too terrible to sing about, some realities too dark to transform into music. Tupac saw something in that crowd that chilled 60,000 fans, because what he saw was the face of inevitability itself. Cold, professional, patient, and absolutely certain of its ultimate victory. The Oakland concert incident became a turning point not just for Tupac but for the entire hip-hop industry's approach to security and threat assessment. What happened that night established new protocols for protecting high-profile artists and changed how the entertainment industry viewed potential threats. In the weeks following the concert, other major hip-hop artists reported similar encounters with suspicious individuals at their performances. The pattern suggested a coordinated surveillance operation targeting multiple figures in the industry, with Tupac being the primary focus. Jay-Z later revealed that he had noticed the same man in a gray suit at his own concert in New York just days after the Oakland incident. He wasn't sit there as a fan, Jay-Z recalled in a 2010 interview. He was there for business, professional business. Nas reported a similar sighting at a Philadelphia venue, and even West Coast artists like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg began noticing increased surveillance at their performances. The hip-hop community was being systematically monitored by someone with significant resources and professional training. The FBI's investigation into the Oakland incident eventually connected it to a broader pattern of surveillance targeting successful black entertainers. Documents released years later revealed that the man in the gray suit was part of a network that had been monitoring prominent hip-hop artists since the early 1990s. But the most disturbing revelation came from a former federal agent who chose to speak anonymously about the case in 2015. According to this source, the Oakland concert surveillance was part of something called Operation Silence, a coordinated effort to eliminate hip-hop artists whose influence was deemed threatening to social stability. Tupac wasn't just randomly targeted, the former agent explained. He was specifically selected because his message was resonating with millions of young people in ways that concerned certain government agencies. The plan was always to eliminate him, but they needed to study him first, understand his patterns, his security arrangements. The eye contact at the Oakland concert wasn't just intimidation. It was the final step in a months-long intelligence-gathering operation. The man in the gray suit had been assigned to confirm that the assassination plan was feasible and to deliver a psychological message that would destabilize Tupac in his final months. This explains why Tupac's behavior became increasingly erratic after the Oakland concert. He wasn't suffering from paranoia or stress. He was responding rationally to the very real knowledge that professional killers were tracking his every move. The 60,000 fans who witnessed that moment had actually seen the culmination of a government operation that had been in development for over a year. They had unknowingly served as witnesses to one of the final stages of a conspiracy that would soon claim the life of one of America's most influential artists. The chilling effect of that night extended far beyond Tupac himself. Other hip-hop artists began self-censoring their lyrics, avoiding political topics, and reducing their public appearances. The message had been sent clearly: speak too much truth, gain too much influence, and you will be eliminated. However, the plan backfired in ways the conspirators hadn't anticipated. Tupac's death made his message more powerful, not less. His martyrdom transformed him from a controversial rapper into a symbol of resistance against oppression. His influence grew exponentially after his death, inspiring new generations of artists and activists. The man in the gray suit had succeeded in killing Tupac, but he had failed to silence his voice. In fact, by making Tupac aware of his impending death, the assassin had inspired him to create some of his most powerful and enduring music in his final months. Songs like Hail Mary and Me Against the World were directly influenced by Tupac's knowledge that he was being hunted. The raw emotion, the sense of urgency, the prophetic quality of these tracks came from the very real understanding that his time was limited. The Oakland concert had given Tupac a glimpse of his future killer, but it had also given him the motivation to create a legacy that would outlive his physical form. In trying to intimidate him, the conspiracy had actually empowered him to produce his most important work. Today, the Oakland Coliseum has a small plaque backstage commemorating that night. Though it doesn't mention the true significance of what occurred, it simply reads, "In memory of all artists who refused to be silenced." The 60,000 fans who were present that night carry the memory of witnessing something unprecedented in entertainment history. They saw the exact moment when death announced itself to its intended victim, when professional murder revealed its face to the condemned man. Many of those fans have reported that the experience changed their perspective on celebrity, fame, and the hidden dangers that successful black artists face in America. They understood that what happened to Tupac wasn't random violence or industry beef, it was systematic elimination. Tupac saw something that chilled 60,000 fans, because he saw the face of forces that have always sought to silence voices speaking too much truth.